This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Recorded on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2014, in St. Louis, Missouri. This Agile Life, episode 34. So, I have a rational fear of spiders.
The software industry transforms more and more every day. Agile methods are quickly replacing traditional ones. The question is, are you agile enough? This podcast is devoted to agile and lean software development. Time to welcome your agile coaches on This Agile Life.
Hello everyone, I am your host of This Agile Life, Amos King, and joining me today is my one and only co-host, Craig Buchek.
Hello, Amos.
How are you doing today, Craig?
Pretty good. It was a bit of a rough day, but feeling better now that we're doing stuff we like instead of stuff we have to do.
I like everything that I have to do.
Yeah, that's not what you said earlier today.
All right, well, today the reason why it's just Craig and I is because we have a special topic for everybody, Agile Introspectives instead of Retrospectives. Craig and I have been having some discussions lately, and I'll let Craig take away to define what an introspective is, or what we've defined an introspective as.
So an introspective is basically just a one-person retrospective. It's about one person. There may be more than one person involved in it, but it's about one person. And this is something I kind of stumbled on. We kind of stumbled on last week. We tried it, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so how we stumbled on this is, I don't know how much you want me to share here, Craig.
No, everything. I mean, I blogged about it, so.
Okay, and so did I, in case anybody wants to read those. We had a team member come to me and say that he thought that Craig was becoming a blocker of progress on the team, and he was very nice about it and kind of really wanted Craig to know, I think. So I went to Craig and said, "There's someone on the team who says that you're becoming a blocker," and Craig, I guess, how did you feel whenever that happened? Like, what was your first reaction, and then how did you come to? You ended up asking me if I would do a one-person retrospective for you.
And that took a few minutes to get to that. So, like anyone that receives criticism, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like trying to move this team forward. What the heck are you talking about? And in fact, someone read my blog that's on the team and said a similar thing, but I thought for a few seconds, I'm like, well, if someone thinks I'm a problem, then that in itself is enough of a problem to need to be addressed.
I think that's really important. Like, not enough of us think that if someone else thinks that we're a problem, we don't say, well, that's a problem that needs to be addressed. We just write them off a lot of times.
And so, the first thing was, okay, if they think that I'm a problem, then that's a problem. But, maybe they're right. So part of it was trying to get more details about, why did they think this, I guess. What in particular was I doing that made them think that? And then I kind of worked from the assumption that he was right. And in some ways that doesn't matter if he was right or wrong. And it's probably better to work for the assumption that he was right. Let's put this in shades of gray. He was right in some way, at the very least.
Right, and as I think that if we sit back and take criticism as in if they're right, we all have things that we can change, and we can get better at everything. So either way, hopefully, we come to an improvement.
Yeah, so, that's what Agile has taught me, is that, there's always room for improvement. And a retrospective is to me, the biggest part of being Agile and being able to change and being able to improve. So I'm like, well, if it works for a team, let's see if it worked for an individual. And so I asked Amos, I'm like, well, let's do a retrospective. Let's do a retrospective on this one topic about me. And, I knew it wasn't going to be the easiest thing in the world because it's focused on me and criticism about me, specifically. So, that was a hit to the ego, but in some ways, let's take that hit to the ego really quickly and move on, right? And that's what you do at a retrospective a bit too, sometimes.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's different in a retrospective whenever you might be called out on something, and it's not, the whole retrospective is not focused on you, as opposed to, right, in this situation, we were focused on what can Craig do to improve
and that's,
for the team.
And that's the focus, not what did Craig do wrong. What can Craig do to improve?
Right.
And that's the same mentality you take into a retrospective, right? So I took that same perspective into this, and it helped.
Well, and with what we came out from, I wouldn't say that it was that you did anything wrong anyway, right? Like, I don't think in any way it can be construed as wrong. You were doing things that you thought were best for the team.
Well, yeah, maybe not. Basically, I guess I was doing what I thought was right, but not without really thinking about it. And this made me think about it, consciously think about it, and how I could do better at, those things, at, basically team discussions and discussions in front of management. So the complaint was basically, that I was causing the manager to doubt. I was putting up doubts in the manager's mind about making these changes that we wanted to make. And there are things I wanted to make. Maybe I wanted to be more cautious than some of the other team members. But basically that was sort of being misconstrued or seen as a block to making progress.
Well, and I will say that this is actually, my wife tells me this all the time, is that you have to assume that people have done the best that they can with the knowledge that they have at the time. And I know that you say that at retrospectives a lot too.
Yeah, I believe it's called the Agile Retrospective Prime Directive. And so I put it at the top of every retrospective. I try to, if there's a new person, I'll actually read it. Otherwise, I actually just put it in the agenda for everyone to read to remind them.
So my wife is an Agile facilitator and doesn't even know it.
Apparently. Yeah.
So going into this, we had really little to go on. We had the other person saying that you're a blocker, and that was about it. So what we did was Craig and I sat down to do the retrospective, and that person happened to be online, and so I was able to chat with that person in a chat room and keep that person anonymous while still talking to Craig and giving him feedback from that other person for a little bit. And we only did that for the first few minutes to try to get an understanding of what we were after.
Yeah, plus actually I had you send in my takeaways as well, which I ended up putting on my blog anyway, so they could have seen it. Anyone can see it. And that, to me, that was a great thing. For one, part of my problem with receiving criticism is confrontation. And so this was basically a non-confrontational way to get me that information that I needed to improve. So, my butt hurt only lasted for, a few seconds instead of, a few minutes or a few hours or a few days or whatever. So, my feelings weren't hurt probably as much as they would have been with direct confrontation. I'm very appreciative to that person for criticizing me, especially in the way that he did.
Yeah, it's weird because, we talk about people talking behind your back and wanting to approach you directly, and that's how they should do it. But it wasn't that he came just to complain. He came to try to make a change, which is a little different than complaining. And sometimes it's a good way to approach it. Is, hey, maybe I shouldn't come and criticize them directly, because they can't get as upset if they're afraid that you're going to get upset.
So I'm actually curious about what their thoughts were about how that would improve, or how that would improve the situation. I don't think they expected me to have an introspective thing here, So I wonder what the thoughts going through their head were. I'd almost be interested to have them write a blog post too, to have a third perspective. But I'm not sure I want to. I appreciate that they were anonymous, and I think I want them to remain anonymous. I guess if they don't want to, that's fine too. But that would be an interesting third perspective on this.
Yeah, it would. Well, I will talk to that person and we'll see what happens.
That'd be funny.
So from that point, we went on to trying to figure out how this whole introspective thing was going to work.
And we failed the first few tries. We tried a few things, and we had a little discussion, but we didn't move forward a whole lot. The first half, I would say. And it lasted about an hour total, maybe. And the first half hour, we kind of stumbled around and like, oh, well, what do you think? And how's this? And, the second...
We did discuss trying during that time period too, though. Like, try, fail, try again, fail better. Right?
I think that might have been in the first half. I mean, we basically took a look at things and just kind of talked things out. It was probably more just kind of free association. And I came up with a few takeaways. They weren't the most insightful, though, of what I came up with takeaways and almost actually action items or things to keep in mind, So, but the second half, and we kind of, we went on a few tangents, but then the second half was where things really turned around. And so Amos decided to play the Y game. I call it the Y game. I think its more popular name is the 5 Ys. I don't find that the best name because 5 is actually not the number. It's probing. Basically, okay, something happened. Why did it happen? It's basically root cause analysis.
Now the thing that I think is important about the 5 Whys game, and a lot of people just say why over and over, is that it doesn't mean that the question has to be why. It can be what. You're just really trying to probe deeper into what's going on. And don't ask the same question over and over. Change it up. If you're not getting an answer from the person, change the question.
So it's interesting. The 5 Whys actually comes into play a lot of times. Of course, a 5-year-old's going to say, why is the sky blue? Well, because of oxygen and light bins. Why? And that some people don't like that, but it is a way for kids to learn, though, a lot, right? It's an excellent way for kids to learn. So, but like he says, don't just say why. Ask. So why did you do that? And then, well, I did that because of this. Well, why did you do that?
Or what made you think that was a good idea? Or that's the point, is that it doesn't have to be why. It just has to be a question.
Yeah. So another place the Y game is used effectively is when you're doing a requirements analysis of you're trying to figure out what the features to add to the project. And so you go to the customer and they say, well, I want to be able to do this. And you're like, well, why do you want to be able to do that? And eventually, if you ask why enough, it should come up to one of the answers of basically creating profit or saving money. There's a few other possibilities like meeting regulations or some external requirements, but usually it's about making money or saving money. So that's another effective use of the 5 Whys game.
All right, so we kind of wondered who else was doing this out there. Craig, I think you said that you had heard of people doing like an entire room full, like the whole team and one person being the focus.
Yeah, unfortunately I don't remember where I heard that. So basically they do sort of a I don't know if they call it a peer review or a a peer retrospective or maybe a 360-degree review, something like that. But that this was hard to decide to do, but I can't imagine doing it in front of the whole team. And I wish I remembered who it was and how, so we could look up how they do it. I mean, one of the problems is we don't even really know the name for this. We coined the term introspective, and that's mainly because retrospective looks back on the past period, past iteration, or however long. And to me, this was looking inward. Me, about me. It involved feelings and emotions and self-analysis. So I thought introspective was a good name for it. But if other people are doing it, they may have a different name, and I just don't know how to search for that or find that. But when I started doing it, I'm like, oh, no one's ever done this before. And then a little while later, I'm like, oh, I have heard of something like this.
Well, I don't really care what it's called. I know that I felt like it worked for us. And the weird thing is that I also, like, as facilitating it, got a lot out of it and did a lot of inward thought in, like, are these things going on with me? Am I contributing to this? How can I better serve Craig as a team member in all of these things that we were discussing?
That's interesting. We were trying to improve the team and ourselves at the same time.
Oh, Craig, I can hear your cat purr.
Yeah, that's probably not the best thing for a podcast.
Oh, cats are fun anywhere. What was my thing? I love cats. I've just never been able to finish a whole one. That may not be a good joke for a programming podcast.
People eating tasty animals.
Nice. So, do you have anything else to say about introspectives as themselves, or should we move on to kind of what the introspective ended up being about?
So, yeah, I got a few other things. One is, what did we get out of it? Or basically, I'd recommend that people try this. We both, like you said, we both got a lot out of it. A lot of times at a retrospective, at the end of the retrospective, you just feel good about yourself and the team and life in general, right? This had that same feeling, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of making things better, and hey, life is going to be better in the future because we've made these changes and positive changes, so it makes you feel good at the end of it.
I felt so good about this that, like, an hour after it, I called you to say, "Hey, this was awesome."
That was awesome. And then we were like, "We need to blog about it over the weekend." And then so we both did, and the write-ups were cool. And now we got to do a podcast about it. And now we need to tell the world this was pretty awesome.
Do it.
Yeah, you should do it too.
So grab another person on your team. I don't think that you need to wait for there to be a problem or someone to complain about someone else. I think maybe that helps start the conversation, but maybe just grab someone else on your team that you trust really well and say, "Hey, can we come talk about me?"
I think it helps a lot to have a topic, though, to get started. I can't imagine not having a topic on your first one, but maybe that give your trusted advisor some time to think about maybe where you could talk about improving. Having
maybe
something
you could
specific helped a lot.
Try just some word games, some other retrospective games to get down to something that you could talk about.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, but I think the key to get started is trust. If you ever had a retrospective with a new team, you don't have that level of trust yet, it's harder. But it does build that level of trust. I can't imagine starting this without someone I trust. For one thing, retrospectives kind of are like therapy, right? And you wouldn't want to have a therapist you didn't trust. So if you're going to do it, start with that one trusted person on your team or outside your team or whatever. That's why I can't imagine the doing it in front of your whole team. I guess I've had teams where most of the team I had that level of trust, but I can't see it being forced upon me. I don't see enjoying that. But doing it voluntarily and finding those people I trust, or at least one person, I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, and I think I've done things like this in the past with just a piece of paper. I've written down little surveys and said, "Hey, team, can everybody fill this out and just to let me know how I'm doing?" And it's kind of the same thing, but it's different whenever you have to talk about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the important part of what we got out of the talk was talking about, ourselves.
Yep. So I think that leads us into our second topic.
Wait. I was just thinking, the survey thing. Maybe that's a good way to start this. Is send out the survey and ask everybody to give it to that trusted guy. And then let that person then build a little introspective for you.
That might work. Or maybe send out something to everyone. Hey, if you could change one thing about one person on your team, what would it be? Or one person about each person on your team. That might be a good start.
That'd be cool. All right, so topic 2. I'll let you run with that.
All right, so topic 2 is fear. So the Y game basically led to a fear of mine. And we all have fears. A lot of times we don't even recognize them. So, specifically, what we came up with was me having a fear of failure. And so I think everyone has a fear of failure. But I thought I was kind of fearless, actually. I like to push ahead pretty quickly. I'm maybe a little more conservative than Amos. Amos definitely seems fearless.
I'm afraid to not change. If I don't change now, then tomorrow I won't be better than today.
You have a fear of stagnating, huh?
Yes.
So, I'll ask you a question then. Is that fear ever harmful?
I don't know.
Stop having introspective on the air with me.
No, it's fine. It probably is. I'm trying to think back of at any point in time where I felt like it was harmful, but I think that there are just so many people around that are willing to say, no, we can't change that. That no matter how hard I push forward, we'd never move fast enough for me to feel like it's bad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was allowed to just go full steam ahead, possibly, but I haven't been allowed to do that very often, unless I've been completely in control. And then even then I wasn't completely in control. I mean, you worked with me. I leave as much as I can up to everybody else, but I get really frustrated if we're not making change. And I think so, yeah. in that way, my frustration with other people is increased because, like, whenever Craig doesn't want to make a change, I'm pissed off that Craig doesn't want to make a change, because why wouldn't we want to change? Why wouldn't we want to figure out how to get better? And Craig might just be being a little more thoughtful in how we should move forward.
Yeah, I think maybe my thought is that maybe, the pendulum's too far the other direction. If you're too fearless, fear in the real world is, productive sometimes. Like, it keeps you from being eaten by the lion. But I think in our everyday life, I think fear usually is a problem, though, right? It's usually more of a problem because we're not out in the savannah trying to avoid lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! So I think fear holds us back more than it protects us in the business world, at least in the modern world. So my fear was, as I said, a fear of failing. And we dug into why is that? Well, honestly, I haven't failed a lot, and so Amos asked me, well, why haven't you failed very much? And the weird thing is, I kind of believe in failure-based learning. Like, when you fail, you're going to learn a lesson better than if someone told you to do something.
That was the scariest thing you said to me in the whole conversation. Was I haven't failed a lot. It's because it was like, wow, like, how much have you I felt this way, and I don't know how founded it is, but it was like, how much have you not done because you haven't failed? Like, what could you have done if you had failed a ton?
Well, usually I learn from other people's failures really, really well. I think now this is a bit of a tangent, but I'm above average intelligence, right? And I think almost 90% of that is just learning from others' failures than anything else. Just having a higher ability to do that just is such a positive gain.
There are so many intelligent people. There are so many intelligent people in our career field that don't do that very well. And one thing that I've been thinking about lately is that aha moment. I heard Penn Jillette talking the other day on a podcast, and he said something about magic that you see on TV, magic tricks. The reason why people don't find out how to do something and then just go share how it's done with the world is because most of the time how it's done is not this like grand aha moment. It's not exciting. So you're like, oh. And it kind of ruins it for you, and you move on. And I think a lot of things that we learn about software design and working as a team, and the reason why we relearn it and we kind of don't believe is because that aha moment when we figure it out is not all that exciting. Like single responsibility principle. Oh, yeah, that
makes
sense. like it's not like, oh, I have this mirror and this smoke. It's like I got a piece of tape on the back of the soda can when I do this magic trick. Oh, well, boring,
So that's probably why we keep forgetting things and relearning things, right? I mean, I knew about the single responsibility principle probably in college. We learned, and college was a long time ago for me.
Were you like 108?
Or early 90s for me, So, we learned object-oriented programming, and we learned a lot of the principles that still are in play today. And, you forget them, and then you kind of relearn them. But back to the failure part, I think when I learn, I want to know why. Why do we do it this way and not the other way? And the answer is basically usually because you're going to fail if you do it the other way. And so instead of failing, I actually look at what the failure mode is versus the success mode. So when I say that I haven't failed much, it's more because I don't have to do the failure myself. I just have to see what failure looks like.
So what if nobody else has failed in that way?
Well, then I'm going to learn by failing. I'm going to learn by doing in that case instead of learn, by reading or having someone show me. And different people learn in different ways. There's the visual learners, and then there's the audio learners that a lecture works for them. And then there's the people that learn best when they read. And then there's people that learn best when they do. I'm pretty good at most of those, but probably best at reading. And reading gives me that in-depth, what happens when you do this and what happens when you do that. So you can see the failure mode and the success mode.
But if you always look for someone else to fail before you and to learn from their failure, how do you innovate and change, like in ways that no one else has done before?
Well, you're going to have to fail in order to innovate. And you're going to have to fail when you can't find the answers. Like we can't find anyone else that is doing this agile practice of introspectives because we don't know how to find it. So we kind of have to make our own way. We struggled with it the first half hour, and then we found something that worked.
And if we do it again, we'll probably struggle some more.
Right.
Hopefully we get better at it.
We'll try different things, right?
Right.
And that's so the interesting thing about me and failure is I've been talking for a while about what I call failure-based learning. And, when you learn, like I said before, when you fail, you're going to learn a big lesson, and you're going to have a harder time forgetting that lesson. So I kind of wish there was a way to force failures in sort of a safe environment so that people learn better. So like if you're teaching someone the single responsibility principle, show them a case where you're not using an SRP and show them why, take them down the path until it breaks something and things don't work. And then show them SRP and say, well, this is the better path. Because you just failed doing the other thing. Now let's do it the right way. I think that's hard to even find a way to teach that way. But I think it would be more effective than most of the ways we're teaching today.
I think most technical book authors or people who do videos, what do they call that? Like Ruby Tapas.
Tutorials.
Yeah. Anytime you're doing those, that's the hardest part, is to come up with an example that is simple enough that you can do it within the class, but not so simple that it doesn't mean a whole lot, because people will pick it apart and be like, well, that's not realistic. Well, that's true, but it is supposed to show it's just supposed to show you something. Don't pick apart the other part of it. And so coming up with those examples where you can show somebody like single responsibility principle and the failure behind it and not seem meaningless is rather difficult.
To wrap up the fear topic, we all have fears, and we need to overcome those fears in a lot of cases to improve the way we do things. So look into those fears and address them.
Now let's be as cliche as possible.
Oh, hang on. I have a quick story. I have a fear of spiders. So in college, I decided
I thought you said you were smart.
What? Lots of smart people have a fear of spiders or snakes. I don't mind snakes unless they're, trying to bite my face or something. But I'll handle a snake, no problem. So I decided to get over my fear of spiders. So I was in college and I bought a tarantula, thinking that, if I have a tarantula around, maybe I'll get to, let this tarantula walk on my arm and stuff.
Oh my God.
So we put him in a terrarium, and then we put him in a fish tank, and some sand on the bottom, and you got to feed him crickets or a pinky mouse, and so the spiders they don't drink very well. You can't just put like a cup of water, and they're not very good at drinking that way.
I thought you were saying since you were in college, you were trying to load him up with vodka or something.
No. So the best way for them to drink is to put some water in a sponge and put that in his terrarium or whatever. And so I did that, and I came up with the worst case of hives that the school doctor had ever seen. And so, I do some research, and it turns out that he's got what are called articulating hairs. They're these little hairs on his body that he can shoot out, actually, when he gets scared, when he's fearful. And they got some toxin in them. And about 1 or 2% of people are extra allergic to that toxin. So
so fear verified is what you're telling me.
So the story is I don't have an irrational fear of spiders anymore. I have a rational fear of spiders.
That's fantastic. I thought you were going to say, so I got him out to let him crawl on my arm in order to try to get over my fear, and then I just smashed him.
Oh, I think he would bite you if you smashed him. The guy was pretty big.
Oh, man. I think that's a fantastic way to in this, and we might have ended up with a show title there. My fear is rational.
This week's hottest picks.
Greg, you go first.
So my pick tonight is Homebrew. If you're using a Mac and you're not using Homebrew, then I don't know what's wrong with you. Basically, it's a way to get command line apps installed. It's basically a dependency manager for command line apps, an installer. If you're using something like Linux, it's basically like apt-get or yum or something like that. Also, something I just recently learned about is called Homebrew Cask, and it's basically for, the same thing but adds binaries. So you install this sort of Homebrew plugin, and then you can install binaries, things like Chrome or Firefox. So basically, I haven't gone too far with this yet, but when I get a new Mac, I'll install Firefox and then Chrome and then all these things that you have to download the installers for. And I've started scripting wget to get the latest version, but this will allow me not to have to do all that work. I'll just do brew install Chrome and it'll install it for me.
And then you can script that.
Yeah, exactly. So basically I'll have almost every application on my system just scripted. So I get a new system, I run the script, and I come back an hour later and everything's installed. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
That's my pick.
All right, and I'm a big fan of Homebrew. And I've heard about Homebrew Cast, but haven't really looked into it. So now I don't have to. Thanks, Greg. So I'm gonna pick an old. Maybe it's not that old. It's a book that I read a while back, but I just saw it pop up today. Is Pragmatic Thinking and Learning by Andy Hunt. It's from the Pragmatic Bookshelf. Studios is their teaching place, and it's a lot about the Dreyfus model and how the brain works and just learning. So
to talk about fear.
I don't remember. It's been too long since I read it. Maybe I should read it again. But that's it. That's my only pick, and I think that it's a good one. We all need to learn and grow. So let's learn how to learn better. Okay, that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank my co-host, Craig, for joining me to talk about Agile Introspectives and sharing his experience with us today. How can people find out more about you, Craig?
On Twitter, I am Craig Buchek, CraigBuchek. On GitHub, I'm Booch, Booch, and I've started blogging at blog.boochtech, BOOCHTEK.com.
Sounds fantastic, and you can go there and read about Craig's experience as an introspective.
Yay.
And then you can hop on over to my blog from a link on Craig's blog. Hopefully he linked to it. My ugly blog, dirtyinformation.com. Or you can find me on GitHub or Twitter at adcron, ADKRON. Be sure to check out our website, thisagilelife.com, to find show notes for this podcast. And thanks for listening. Keep living this agile life.
This Agile Life is brought to you by a community of Agile developers and coaches aspiring to spread the word about this groundbreaking approach to software development. Join us at thisagilelife.com/community.